and gentlemen. My name is Chinmay Dhangdale, and I am a research intern at Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. It is a great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all to another edition of ICS Wednesday Seminar. The title for today's panel discussion is The Third Plenum and After Understanding the Economic, Political, and Ideological Messaging for China and the World. Panelists for today's seminar are Professor G. Venkatraman, Dr. Arvind Yelleri, and Ms. Swam Siddha Samal. Professor G. Venkatraman is from the Indian Institute of Management, Indore. He is also an honorary fellow at ICS. His recent publication is a co edited volume on BRICS, titled Locating BRICS in the Global Order Perspective from Global South. He has also co authored case studies on Indian businesses in China. Dr. Arvind Yelleri is an associate professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He is also a visiting faculty at the Futan School of Management, Shanghai, and an honorary fellow at the ICS. He has co-edited a book, Tailspin: The Politics of India-China Economic Relations, and authored a book, China Inc., Between State Capitalism and Economic Statecraft. Ms. Swam Saddha Samal is a doctoral candidate in Chinese Studies at Center for the East Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. She has authored both short and long pieces for various esteemed outlets, including the Hindustan Times, First Post, and South Asian Voices. Discussant for today's seminar is Dr. Bhim Subba. Dr. Subba is an assistant professor at the Department of Political Science, School of Social Sciences at University of Hyderabad, and also an adjunct fellow at the ICS. He has publications in several journals, edited books, review blogs, online commentaries, and news media. The chair for today's seminar is Dr. Anand P. Krishnan. Dr. Krishnan is a fellow at the Center of Excellence for Himalayan Studies at Shiv Nanda Institution of Eminence, Delhi National Capital Region, and an adjunct fellow at the ICS. Before I hand over to the chair, I would like to ask all the participants to follow the few housekeeping rules. All participants shall be muted during the seminar. Questions may be posted in the chat box along with your name and affiliation. Alternatively, you may use the raise your hand option during the interactive session. You shall then be called upon to unmute yourself. Thank you. I now hand over to the chair. Over to you, Dr. Krishnan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chinmay, and good afternoon to all of you. I see that we have about 43 people who have joined till now, so which is definitely great crowd. In fact, I'm seeing people continuing to join. So, a Wednesday afternoon at ICS, as per the tradition, is always a time for thinking, thought, and also great analysis. And this is a tradition which we are having at the ICS, especially in terms of major political events in China, especially whether it is a party congress, whether it is the other sessions, plenary sessions, or even the two sessions. We had one, in fact, in 2 months before. So this is a tradition, of course. So we are slightly late, but definitely, nevertheless, we are hoping that we will continue to offer insights into what was a much important political event for the Chinese Communist Party. So, just to begin, I won't take much of the time because I want to get all the three speakers to offer their thoughts. So, as all of you know, China is just recovering. I mean, its recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic has been really painful. The economy has been in serious problems, facing a downturn, issues, whether it is real estate, whether it is unemployment, overcapacity. These problems continue to persist. And of course, on the geopolitical front, tensions with the United States also is a major challenge, and it is affecting both politically and economically. So it is on this context that the third plenum has taken place. In fact, it was much delayed uh, by usual norms. Again, that is open to speculation on what caused that delay. Is it again due to a lot of factors, or is it Xi Jinping again defying the norms in terms of how his tenure has operated? So all those questions, and finally the uh, plenum happened in July. two three main points to flag this discussion. One, of course, is the role of the party in the economy. I mean, is it, we have all seen how it is the party guided economy or party mediated market economy. But then, if there is real economic recovery that needs to take place, whether the party central role, which of course you find in the report is constantly mentioned, very seriously and very strongly underlined. But will that actually help the economy recover if the party's central role is going to remain as the report clearly points out? That's certainly number one. It's a very comprehensive report, 43 pages, as the tradition with reports and documents of the CPC over the years. This is covers almost all areas. A quick thing which I found while going through the report, there is, I mean, if you look at some of the keywords in the report, I mean, one of the important words which is constantly coming is new. So the new comes with productive forces. The new comes with. I've just, in fact, just noted down things which was related with the word new. So there is new project, new pattern, new growth, new expectations, new development, new period, new stage. I mean, you can just go on. The second, I sort of, which was coming very sharply into the focus, is a significant emphasis on law and legal mechanism. So those are the few points in which I thought we could. I was just initially my initial thoughts on the report itself and what it was. But all we have three speakers, all who are going to cover three specific areas. So the format is going to be that Arvind is going to be looking at economy and Venkat is going to be looking at science and technology and innovation. Of course, there is going to be some overlap between those two. And Swayamsudha is going to be talking about elite politics, because it was not just the economy that was part of major the discussions at the plenum. You had also political and organizational aspects to it as well. I mean, if you also clearly look at some of the disciplinary action which was taken or which was formalized at this third plenary. So those are the three sets. So we have two rounds. In the first round, we all the three speakers, what I wish to get from them are their initial impressions, both in the run up to the plenum and also their initial thoughts on the plenum itself. So that everybody gets about 2 to 3 minutes. And then in the next round, each of their focus areas, they would to enlighten us and to draw your thoughts on that, where each of you would get about 8 to 10 minutes. So that's how we will proceed. And then at the end of that, we'll have Beam, who's going to perform the role of the discussant to sum up the discussions and the analysis. And then we open it out for Q&A. So that's how we have structured this uh, this next 1.5 hours. So without further ado, let me ask Arvind. Of course, he was the last person to join, but since economy generally in third plenum or the traditions, the economy plays the biggest role, and because there are serious economic questions which are rankling China and which needs to be thrashed out. So, Arvind, first 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I see Anand was talking about traditionally how economic has been a key role in the party's functioning. But there are a couple of quick statements with regard to the third plenum. First of all, the third plenum has taken place a bit late, because I think the first two plenums took a little bit of time in consolidating the issues with regard to the ministry. If you remember, especially this Congress, it took longer time in consolidating names for the allocation of the ministries. I think that's where it was stuck. It happened before the Spring Festival. Then after that, the two sessions happened and the third plenum. So it has been said that it is not too late to have a good meal, but it is not good to have a late meal. So what it goes into is, overall, there is a symbolism which indicates that there are major problems with regard to the decision making of the third plenum. That's my first indication. The second indication is, if you see, overall, the importance of third plenum technically remains, but the importance of the plenum has been shifting. If you just go back to the 18th Party Congress Third Plenum and 19th Party Congress Third Plenum, you would see that what it was supposed to decide in the 19th Party Congress Third Plenum was decided in the Fourth Plenum, not in the Third Plenum. And if you see this Party Congress Third Plenum, they are referring back to the Third Plenum of the 18th Party Congress. So what I want to say is that the importance of Third Plenum, what it has been expecting. So far, there has been 7 Third Plenums after opening of 78 reforms. But you will say that the leadership is trying to take away the onus and importance of the Third Plenum, the way things are being expected from the Third Plenum. Why it happens so? Because too much of overwhelming expectations from the Third Plenum, which the leadership are not able to uh, deliver it. I'm later on in the second half, I'm going to speak about the 6-7 major expectations and how these expectations have been creating rifts within the political leadership. And I think taking that discussion forward in 10 seconds, this Third Plenum was nothing about anything revolutionary, talking about releasing the hard budget constraints or unstitching the wallets, give the stimulus packages. This has been a very cautious and a very slow, piecemeal efforts to correct the major institutional mechanisms, regulatory mechanisms which China faltered upon. And I think if there were major expectations from the rest of the world that something big will happen, that did not happen. Many were expecting that the hukou system will taken out. When a country actually the economy is moving towards the westward, it is losing the productivity compared to the other rising economies. There was no reason China will take off the limitations on the hukou, right? So my general understanding is that it delivered what it had to deliver, but expectations of something historical did not happen because of these leadership issues and then the deliveries of the portfolios and deciding the priorities for the party congress.
Thanks, Aravind. That was clearly short and concise. So over to Venkat now.
Thanks, Anand. Thanks for having me here. So I think we should try to look at Third Plenum largely from two perspectives. What is the international ecosystem against which this Third Plenum took place? And then what is the domestic scenario? Very broadly speaking, again, as far as the external ecosystem is concerned, we all know that the world has been going through a very complex geopolitical situation. China has also been, accused significantly of what we all know now is, the overcapacity problem. So this is the external, issue, and China is trying to address this overseas expansion to address this production capacity issues and all, but it cannot solve everything by addressing its external policies. What is it that it can do internally? Because there is a glut there of, for example, overproduction of electric vehicles, and the number of buyers is the gap between number of buyers and manufacturing of electric vehicles seems to be a point of concern. Now, if you're looking at internal scenario, then China seems to, after the Evergrande episode, China seems to have taken a significant, turn in terms of what kind of economic development strategy it would follow. So there is a kind of what some are calling de-real estatization. So focus is shifting from real estate to infrastructure. So given this, what is the thrust of the Third Plenum, as far as the Chinese leadership is concerned? Now, the Chinese leadership is very keen now to, go ahead with what they are calling its strategic determination. Now, what is the strategy? The strategy is to build the nation. What is the determination? The determination is to stable economic situation as there is a shift in the development model, avoid excessive stimulus, and bite the bullet. So Xi Jinping is saying that, economy is important, but for me, national security is more important. So therefore, as the old Chinese saying goes, "Qir ku nai lao." So therefore, the country as such needs to, basically eat some, develop some kind of a taste for bitterness and be ready for hardships and all. Uh, and then there is definitely a very clear shift in, the way this third plenum has, shown how the future developments are going to be. So there is a very clear politics in command kind of a message that is there, where national security considerations are going to be more important over economic constraints. So in the process, if the economy is taking some kind of a hit, then so be it. And so, therefore, later I will, expand that as far as, China is concerned right now, the national security considerations take priority. And the new system for, mobilizing resources nationwide to make tech breakthroughs is the one which this particular, document or the third plenum has, this particular occasion has, you know, given a very, very clear focus on how do we move forward with developing self-reliance. So national security over everything else, politics in command. Yeah, Anand.
Thank you, Venkat. Again, short and very concise. Hope we'll get more insights in the next round. So, Swam Siddha, over to you.
Yes. First of all, thank you to ICS and Anand sir and Bhim sir for giving me this opportunity to speak on elite politics. So I'll start with giving a background on the drafting process and the actual proceedings that happened in the third plenum. So in November 2023, it was decided that a drafting team for the plenum decision would be created, and General Secretary Xi Jinping headed the group. Wang Huning, chairman of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, Cai Qi, director of the CPC General Office, and Ting Xuexiang, the leader of the Central Leading Group on Hong Kong and Macau affairs, served as its deputy chiefs. And General Xi personally served as the head of the document drafting group, planned the entire process, organized research, provided meticulous guidance and direction to the plenum. And notice was issued to all localities, departments, and sectors, as well as to select party members, including retired senior party officials, for consultation and meetings. And these meetings were held on 8th December 2023 and 7th May 2024. When I talk about the actual proceedings of the third plenum, there were about 199 members and 165 alternate members of the Central Committee who attended the session. Members of the Standing Committee of the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection, which has increasingly become a really important uh, group, and leading officials from other relevant departments were also present at the meeting, but in a non-voting capacity. As we all know, several ministers such as Kang and Li Shangfu, among other PLA leaders, were removed, and a few others were elevated as full members of the Central Committee of the CCP. And when I'll give a little background on how the removal and elevation of leaders happen. So the Article 42 of the party charter says that the Central Committee must confirm by a two-thirds majority regarding any decision related to the dismissal, probation, or expulsion of full or alternate member. The Politburo can make such decisions, but in most cases, they must be retroactively endorsed by the Central Committee. As Professor Yellery also mentioned, that there has been not a lot of new changes that probably the outside world was expecting. So I would also take that stance and say that it is a solid endorsement of China's previous policy direction under Xi Jinping, and it does not really offer anything new or expected. And when it comes to the personnel changes, I'll be speaking about that during the second round. Thank you.
Thank you, Swam Siddha. Again, keeping to the time. So now that you have made your first impressions, we'll now proceed with the more substantive part of each of your focus areas. So in this round, I'll begin with Venkat, who's going to be focusing, especially the last part of his opening remarks, where he talked about breakthroughs, tech breakthroughs, which is very good, interesting, and it's really a lot of it in the report as well. And also so tech and innovation, and especially I think how that also builds into national security issues as well. So over to you, Venkat.
Thanks. So, let me try to start by focusing on some of the two most outstanding and critical terms as far as the science and tech innovation part is concerned in this particular, report. Number one, the use of the word new quality production force. Now, this word new quality production force, what does one mean by this? Or what does the Chinese leadership mean by this? The Chinese leadership means by focusing on this particular term, new quality production force. It is determined to address the issue of innovation of new technology. Now, some of you might say that what is new about it? China has been talking about Chuangxin, innovation, science and technology for quite some time. Made in China 2025, socialist, modernization project 2035, 14th five-year plan. Now, the difference is this, that till very recently, China has been, been reactive in terms of what it has been doing, largely in science and technology. But given the tech supply chain disruptions that started under Trump and making China very vulnerable on that count, China has now decided that it is no more going to be responsive to whatever the US is doing. It's going to be more proactive. So therefore, it is going to lead future industries, in which are in very nascent stage. It will focus, beyond increasing its global market share exports as far as this S&T, exports are concerned. Now, the aim is basically now to develop self-sufficiency and reduce dependency on the West, especially on the US, stimulate the domestic economy, and speed up military modernization. Now, the second important term which has been used is this new national system. What does one mean by new national system? New national system means distributing national resources with strong central control, allocate capital to sectors which are strategically more important, emphasize on geopolitics, not economy, optimize existing national capacities in supporting homegrown technologies, to achieve important breakthroughs. Moving up value chains to lead, and China also is basically saying that we would like to, move up the value chain and, lead global governance in certain, high-tech industries, as it has done in the case of 5G. And one of the important lines is, how do they elevate, national guidelines and regulations where there is low carbon footprint and very high degree of innovation, and develop digital intelligence, develop AI, develop IoT, high-end manufacturing. So the focus is on those kind of projects. Now, what are the salient points of as of this particular third plenum when it comes to focus on science and technology? High quality economic development. The Chinese leadership means is, it means to basically facilitate a revolutionary breakthrough in technology, innovative allocation of resources. So, for example, let us take the example of how China is going through making rapid strides in new generation AI, for example. China is adopting, as we all know, the whole of nation approach. So China is making alliances at the same time with industry, with the universities, with the corporates, whereby they all are coming together and, under the central command to ensure that the whole country is driven towards AI. I mean, China is also encouraging, a very, very judicious way in which, the spends are made. So, for example, there is a tremendous amount of focus on quote unquote applied research. There is also a lot of focus on how does basically the government subsidize, certain industries which are working in the field of AI. The government is also seeing how does it can think of innovative ways in which it can finance cutting edge research. For example, alleviating tax, for example, especially for those who are and incentivizing enterprises, corporate organizations to innovate. So the idea is to promote new kind of industries, new business models, and new growth. And so the push is, towards key generative technology, cutting edge technology, and disruptive technology. In fact, as I was looking through some material, I was very surprised, that one of the things which China is also looking for is quote unquote low altitude economy. So I was quite surprised to see what is this low altitude economy. So then when I, tried to look into it, what they meant was, how do they come over traffic congestions by developing flying cars, for example, or, very high-end, high-speed trains. Enterprises are being encouraged to apply digital, intelligent, and, technology and transform and upgrade. The party's leadership is also trying to look at. Some time back, we were seeing that different places in China are known as button capital of the world, zip capital of the world. But gone are those days. Now China is not looking for manufacturing clusters. China is looking for digital industry clusters. The focus is on developing key industrial supply chains so that they are not vulnerable to the choking of supply chains by US. So the focus is on all-round innovation, expanding international science and tech exchange, reinforcing role of enterprises, uh, encourage science and tech, small and medium enterprises to boost R&D. One of the most important things in this particular, plenum has been how China has decided now to, elevate this whole question of what is known as talent. So now talent, education, science, and technology, all three are being treated at par with each other. Uh, now, so this is something which they call, they're saying that all three, talent, education, science, and tech, all three are being recognized as integral to quote unquote basic and strategic underpinning of Chinese modernization. So they are saying 教育科技人才是中国实现歹化的基础性战略性支撑。So this is, very, very important. For example, as part of, promoting talent and, China is investing big on some 34 universities, undergraduate programs, where the students will be, will be trained on high-end AI, machine learning, and all. And the latest cutting edge technology that is taking place in corporates and best universities in the world, curriculums are being formed, academic curricula, is being formed to train them. Another interesting, aspect of the way China is going about is China doesn't believe in duplicity of, efforts. So therefore, they are saying that I fly tech, you do this. Alibaba, you do this. What is that called? 10 cent, you do this. So therefore, there is an absolute clear-cut division of labor so that there's no duplicity in the way they go about doing things. Now, what are the major challenges that, as all this is being, done, what are the challenges that, the party state is, the party leadership is going to contend with? One is, the party has, this particular third plenum has spoken about the private sector promotion law. Now, we all know that after the Jack Ma episode, how there and the tech backlash in general, has completely shaken the confidence of the private sector. So although the third plenum speaks about the private sector promotion law, it's not very clear how this, the government is going to, how the Chinese party state is going to win back the confidence of the private sector. So this is a big challenge. Second is, given the rising costs of labor, there is a demographic aspect to it also, which is to the advantage and disadvantage of China. Now, as you have more of science and technology, increasing, emphasis on robotics, big data, supercomputing, etc., uh, you want to increase your total factor productivity because the dependent population is increasing. So that is but it also means that there is an impact on overall employment scenario there. And if some of you are following, there have been some talks about increasing the age of retirement and how the Chinese youth have been very upset about it. So that is one challenge. But the advantage which China has is that as far as very high-end R&D labor costs are concerned, skilled labor costs are concerned, the costs are half for China when it compared to the cost that an economy like US has to bear. Now, the third challenge is, this plenum also throws light on increasing degree of centralization that is likely to take place as far as central provincial relations are concerned. After the Evergrande episode, increasingly local governments are no more having that kind of funding which they used to get by land sales. So therefore, the center now is saying that don't worry, I am going to promote you. Now, sometime back, we all know that, very famously, many people quote this, Sang Yo Chan Sir, Xia Yo Tui Sir. But I'm afraid perhaps Xi Jinping's regime is going to put a severe challenge to that particular, conventional understanding of how China's central local politics works. Because till now, whether it is environment or any other aspect, the center used to issue guidelines, and it was up to the provincial leadership to, infuse, veins, blood, muscles into that particular framework. But one is afraid that this time it's not going to be so, especially given the growing financial dependence of the provinces over the center. So therefore, the center is definitely going to wield this stick and say that, I'm going to fund you as long as you are going to, listen to me. Otherwise, you will be definitely facing music. Third is geopolitical.
Venkat, I mean, the time is really, you'll have to wrap
Yeah,
up.
last.
Yeah.
So last is basically, the geopolitical challenges. How does China deal with, for example, growing erection of tariff walls when it comes to its EV exports, solar panel exports, etc., etc. So there, I will stop here because these geopolitical challenges, I think almost all of us are very much aware of, and maybe one can expand that in the Q&A session. But I think these are some of the things which I thought I will bring to the notice of the audience here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Venkat. In fact, fairly comprehensive on that aspect, and in fact, on the private promotion law which you mentioned, I think there is a real emphasis. I mean, if you go through the entire length and breadth of the report, there is a lot of emphasis on law and law-based governance. So legal fix for everything. In fact, there is also talk of various other laws which are also getting flagged. We'll take up this more in the Q&A. So over to
just one sec, just one sec. Sorry to interrupt. As you are saying this, people speak about, I was reading somewhere that there are two type of errors when it comes to Chinese documents, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is, the gap between what they say and what they do. And type 2 error is what they don't say at all, and yet perhaps end up doing many things. So let's not get into that.
Yeah, thanks, Venkat, for that. Over to Arvind now.
Okay, thank you, Anand. I mean, actually, Venkat has covered most of these issues and themes. I will start picking from the question with regard to the economic confidence. I raised the point in my first when we went in the first circle of relaying of summing up our interactions. I raised this question that unusually compared to the last two third plenums, this third plenum has not been that sparkful, and it maintained kind of a low, low octane value. Couple of reasons why, because I think the leadership weren't really sure from where to start with it, to start with economic reforms first, whether to start with macro reforms first, or whether to start with the stimulus package first. So the economic confidence among the private players, among consumers, among investors is absolutely rock bottom has reached, and as a result of it, there has to be some kind of a metabolism which needs to be developed in the economy, which the leaders tried, but in the third plenum, I think they fell short. And the reference to the socialist modernization, putting technology in between and saying high tech technological productive forces should be brought into the mainframe, that won't change the important issues the Chinese economies are dealing with. Those are as serious as, which will really make Chinese leadership reflect back on few issues. I picked up 6 important issues, to just figure out how the things which are actually serious but have not been touched, or maybe they have been touched but in a very superficial way. To start with, the first thing is about the basic economic system. I think the Chinese political leadership still believe that it is the politics, it is the Beijing, it is the central party leadership which will actually control the levers. But in fact, you will see that what is happening, though at the policy level Beijing has been controlling, but it has been actually threatening, instigating the provincial governments, the point which Venkat again put out, to perform. But if the political leadership, CPC, is connecting performance with, and just giving that, accountability or responsibility to the provincial leadership, which are actually running bankrupt. Remember one thing, these were the same provinces which contributed phenomenally to the state exchequer by, taking the larger share in exports. And if the exports are, past 2 and 3 years are plunging by approximately 13 to 14% year on year, that means that contribution is dropping. The contribution to the national economy is also dropping by, say, what, for 12 or 13%. What it makes the sense is that the provinces do not have the confidences. And one more thing, in the entire ecosystem where, even before the Xi Jinping came, private enterprises were playing an important role in capital expenditures, capex. So if you do not have an economic confidence in the system and from where you're going to implement it, and remember, in the upcoming plenums, there will be a launch of 5-year plan again, right? So the first important question is that if you're not actually dealing with the questions pertaining to the economic system, that is going to create major worries. If you ask me now, give me a render. What is the best render to say that the economic system is not functioning? I give you one render of the import-export figures. The second one is about the property rights protection. The state has not really come out. After Evergrande, what happened in Henan province? The state council was supposed to come up with clear vision with regard to the property rights. Who owns the properties? What happens to the household properties? What happens to the agriculture properties? That has not been clearly touched by the third plenum. If not the big decisions, I think these decisions were supposed to taken by the third plenum. I think these are the decisions which are very simple decisions, which were actually falling in the ambit of the leadership, would have helped to increase or enhance the confidence among the all the variables or productive factors with related to economic principle. That was first point. Second point is the market system. See, one has to understand when China talks about market, in past couple of years, the Chinese leadership has really tried to recover the fragile market systems by announcing a series of incremental policy supports for the economy. But actually, that has not been implemented on the ground because the entire market system, which talks about the national unified systems, taking care of the diversified opinions or the subjective factors with regard to implementation of the centrist policies is still there, because the provinces, the private enterprises, the state enterprises do not have real clarity with regard to market. I mean, with market, they have to work upon what is the convertibility. Can we say at the end of the day, when China says that it is implementing market socialism, can we say that it is the market which is actually driving the growth? That's not the case. It comes back to the square one. It comes back to the state council. It comes back to the Politburo. It comes back to the state leadership. They have to decide. They have to tell. Exactly. Again, point taking, what Venkat was saying. The enterprises were said to do something. This is not where the market is playing an important role. And the fundamental thing, even if China wants to grow about 3 to 4%, they should allow market forces to have some say in the functioning of the forces. Otherwise, it becomes difficult. There will be ground differences, what the leadership wants and what is actually happening on the ground. The third point is transforming the functions of the government. Here again, what is most important over here? I give you the case, where there was a plan by the central government a few years back to raise special enterprises. These enterprises are not the state enterprises, PSUs, but the enterprises which are private enterprises, but handpicked by the provinces. Now, what happened to those plans? Because the provinces have their own say, they want to have their own say. The enterprises, private enterprises want to have their own say. And as a result of it, actually, there is a growing number of ambiguities with regard to the control of the government functions. So government functions are not again defined. So these are very basic and important. These are very fundamental things. You have to improve the market system. You have to improve the economic system. You have to bring in a lot of clarity. Where does the center stop? Where the functions of the SOE stop, where there's the subsidiaries function stop. It is not, defined. And where it gets more murkier, the financial enterprises, the financial SOEs do not know what is the limit they have to stop, with regard to their investment, with regard to their loans, with regard to their, allocations of assets. They do not have any idea. There was a time when the NPAs of the state enterprises were converted into enterprises, and that enterprises started functioning and reaping, the benefits out of it, profits out of it. But over the period of past 15 years, the non-performance of the state enterprises, because there is no clear, division of labor, division of authority, the NPAs are again rising. I mean, it might be blamed on the global financial crisis. It may be blamed on the great COVID, and COVID has become simple dumping ground. And anything happens bad in China, it just been sold in the name of COVID. That's not something which was expected from Third Plenum. Third Plenum should have at least discussed, come up with clear clarity with regard to that. Fourth important thing is with regard to the deepening of fiscal and taxation system. Every one of us know that the entire fiasco with regard to the important segment of reforms, and that is with regard to the reforms in the sector of tax systems. China has been doing number of different ideas, transitioning from a turnover tax to VAT in 2016, and then trying to have a comprehensive reform in the PIT, personal income tax in 2018. They tried to simplify it, but it really has not reflected it, because there is a substantial decline in the decline of tax revenue in the GDP, and rendering the current tax ratio to the second lowest among the comparative countries. So this is something government, the system, the leadership needs to focus, instead of flowery words or the technical terms they have been using in the Third Plenum. This is something important, a backbone for improving the tax fiscal system, which they have not paid enough attention. I mean, as I go, maybe after the Third Plenum, as it goes, until the fourth plenum takes place, and then they start planning for their fifth 5-year plans up to the fifth plenum. Maybe something substantial come out, but this plenum did not come out anything with regard to that. Fifth important factor, I think this is something very serious in China, and I think most of the policy documents, speeches by the central leadership have been talking about, and I think largely everybody was talking about the regional inequality. The regional inequality, which talks about how there is a failure of urban-rural integration development. The government has been talking about it. Independently, Xi Jinping was talking about the rural revitalization. And then he talked about developing the delta basins, developing the sub-pockets between the provinces, or maybe clubbing the provinces together and having the interprovincial marriages with regard to the developmental goals, with regard to the setting of parameters. But on the ground has had really happened. In the end, if you look at the results, it would you will see that there is an excessive urban-rural gap still exists. There is an unequal and insufficient development in both urban and rural areas. I mean, the figures talk about a lot of industries have shifted to the rural areas, okay, because of the cheap labor and because the provinces are ready to parent the manufacturing, okay, heavy manufacturing, which leads to pollution also, which the coastal provinces are not ready to take it. But how you read it? You really read it as a natural development of diversification, a natural way of taking the Western sectors into the flanking the Western sectors and making them stakeholders into the balancing the urban-rural growth. That doesn't really look. That really is not really happening. One example, if you ask me, again, the render over here, an example over here, if you take the Yellow River Basin. Now, Yellow River Basin depends highly on the scientific development, okay? And it's also an area where one can really measure till what extent the urban-rural integration has happened. And one can see that, the Yellow River Basin is still failing to identify what should be the spatial layout of the URI in the Yellow River Basin. We're talking, 10 years of planning, 10 years of, giving dreams to Chinese people that, we have to develop the spatial, economy. Where is that? No big words over here. Talking, you want to improve the economy? Come on, I mean, third plenum has to be talking about simple nuts and bolts. These are simple nuts and bolts through which the leadership could have taken the serious, note of these dichotomies. And the last figure, the last point is about the institutional opening up. Listen, what happened is in past 1 decade, or specifically in past 5 years, the investors, domestic investors and the international investors have lost hope. They do not trust the party. It was the party who told them to invest into sector A, B, and C. And when the crisis was right there, which was right there and coming and hitting, the party did not take any stand. There were investors, overseas investors from Southeast Asia and Europe, who actually wanted central government to take a step to protect their investments. It did not happen. That's one factor of saying. But the important problem over here is that how much of the opening the central government is ready to take forward when they are closing all the gates. They are not letting the foreign, they are not letting the other sectors, other areas to let the investors come in. They're closing their domestic markets. And how would they ensure the investors to come in? Till what extent there will be opening up? That is still undefined. And last point, if I have 1 more minute, the entire idea of setting up some geographical designated area, something called free trade, something called a new city, that should not be the model of a Chinese, leaders. And somewhere there was hope that Chinese leadership in the third plenum or in subsequent months would come down, and take some stand on these issues. I'll tell you one example. Again, examples. The Suzhou Free Trade Zone. The Suzhou Free Trade Zone was once upon a time. Okay, this is in Jiangsu province, and Jiangsu province, as every one of you know, was performing like a Karnataka of China. Nanjing was the bustling hub for the high-tech industries. Now that has been absolutely taken out from them. It has moved to Nanshan district of Shenzhen. Now, in this scenario, the Jiangsu government is putting a lot of funds into Suzhou Free Trade Zone. I mean, what is the feasibility? And how they do it actually, they create a private company and then they ask the private companies to go door to door, ask money from the banks, from the foreign investors. These are 6 important issues which I think are important for any economy to start even functioning further, even by 1 degree. I'm not expecting it to walk and run, but at least to scroll further. And to my understanding, the third plenum has talked about the big things, the mesh, but it has not told how to do it. Okay, so that's the problem. So they say, even if the tree wants to stand still, but if the winds are not letting it to stand still, what happens next? It means that there is a major crisis, major problem going to come. These were the 6 aspects I wanted to take as a framework to put more focus on the third plenum. I'll discuss the other matters in the Q&A. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Arvind. Just slightly overshot time, but thank you for that. Swamsida is next. She is saying there's a PPT. I mean, if it is, I would ask her to actually ensure that she kind of sticks to the time. Thanks.
So it's okay. I'll not use the PPT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll talk about the personnel changes that have happened and the important ones, especially. And I don't think I can talk about personnel changes in the third plenum without talking about foreign minister Kang. So, to refresh everyone's memory, I would like to give a short timeline of what the trajectory of his foreign ministership was, if I may. So on 11 July 2023, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin announced that Kang would not be attending the ASEAN foreign ministers meetings in Indonesia on 13th and 14th July for health reasons. Prior to that, he was seen on 25th June, and there had been no public appearances of his after that. He did not attend the meeting with US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen or US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger in the same month. By this time, rumors had started to make round in the Chinese and Western media, speculating an affair between Kang and Hong Kong reporter Fu Xiaotian. And this was also speculated that because of this, he probably might have been removed from his position. However, there was nothing confirmed. On 25th July 2023, Kang was officially removed from the office as the Minister of Foreign Affairs of China by a decree signed by the President Xi Jinping after a list of appointments and removals were passed in the 14th National People's Congress Standing Committee, and his predecessor Wang Yi was reappointed to the office. On 27th February 2024, the Chinese state media announced that Qin had resigned as lawmaker from the 14th National People's Congress, and his resignation was accepted. His resignation was finally approved in this third plenum on 18 July 2024. However, there was no disciplinary action that was initiated against him, and he was still referred to as comrade. And this is something that we'll see was different with the PLA leaders that have been dismissed under the third plenum. So, two of the big names which were against whom disciplinary action was conducted were Li Shangfu and Wei Fenghe. In September 2023, it was reported that Li Shangfu was under anti-corruption investigations by the CCDI, and Wei Fenghe, who is a retired general in the PLA and served as the commander of the PLA rocket force, and was Minister of National Defense from 2018 to 2023. Against him, there were also investigations, disciplinary investigations, and Wu Qian, the spokesperson of the Ministry of National Defense, said on August 31st that anyone who will defy the disciplinary norms, and they will be investigated, and every case and crackdown will be taken very seriously. And zero tolerance of corruption will be there. And on the 74th National Day of China, Wei and Li, they were both absent from the event. And on 27th June 2024, the CPC Politburo announced that both of them had been expelled from the party on disciplinary and law violations, and their cases had been referred to the military legal organizations for criminal proceedings. The allegations against them were that they accepted unauthorized gifts and large amounts of money in exchange for using their power to benefit others. Both men were obviously stripped of their rank of general. On 24th October 2023, the Standing Committee of the 14th National People's Congress decided to remove Li Shangfu from the post of State Councillor and Minister of National Defense. He was also removed from the CMC. So it can be seen that the treatment towards Qin Kang and treatment towards these two leaders were very different, and it it was a harsher treatment towards the PLA generals and some other leaders from the PLA rocket force, such as Li Yuchao, Xu Chongpu, and Sun Chinming. They were all removed. All of them had disciplinary actions against them, and they were all removed last year in July. And they were not only removed from their positions but also from the party, a treatment that Shin Kang has had not gone through. So we can understand that there has been a targeted attack on PLA members, especially the PLA Rocket Force members. Last year in December, 9 PLA generals were dismissed from the National People's Congress, and the report carried the announcement of the report that carried this announcement did not attribute any reason for their disqualification. So we can see that there is a anti-corruption drive that is really strong in the PLA and in the PLA rocket force, that is dismissing all these officers, and a different treatment is being done to PLA generals and ministers like Chin Kang. Um, Regarding some of the changes that were made in the Central Committee and how some alternate members were elevated to full membership. There are 3 members who were elevated to the full membership this time. They are Ting Shangchun, Yu Lichun, and Yu Chihung. So, Ting is the head of organization department of the CPC Anhui Provincial Committee, and she was elected as an alternate member in October 2022, when the 20th Central Committee of the CPC was held. And she was elevated to a full member in July 2024 in the third plenum. Um, the second member that I talked about, Yu Lichun, is the current head of the organization department of the CPC Sichuan Provincial Committee, and member of the standing committee of the CPC Sichuan Provincial Committee, and he was also elevated to Central Committee member. And finally, Yu Chi-hung, who is also a female, who became the president of Peking National University in April 2024, was elevated to the full membership of the Central Committee. One thing to be noticed here is that 2 out of the 3 members are females. So we all know that never have been any females in the CPC Politburo Standing Committee, and there usually is one in the Politburo, but in 2022, no female was elected. However, this seems a little like a positive development, that 2 out of the 3 who were elevated to full membership were females. Former Minister of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, Thang Renchian, was also suspected of serious violations of laws and regulations in the past few months by the CCDI. However, no announcement was made regarding his position. So these are some of the main personnel changes that happened during the third plenum. However, when it comes to policy changes, there have been very less to no changes. So there is a continuation of talk about the four confidences, the four comprehensives, the two establishments, and the two safeguards. And the plenum reiterated that the CPC must uphold the party central committee's centralized, unified leadership over the endeavor to further deepen reform across the board, deepen
We lost her.
Yes, we lost her. Anand was thinking that maybe he has lost it. No, even Anand. Yeah.
I thought there's a problem my end.
Yeah, no, I also thought it was at my end. Swamsada?
She must be logging in again. Just wait.
No, she's still around.
Can't see her.
What I can say is that most of the from JNU have logged off. So this is the problem with the JNU network.
Oh,
While studying China, we started studying campus internet also.
all right. I think she was towards her final set of points in any case. So I will now ask Bhim to perform his role as the discussant to sum up and also add his own points. We'll get Swamsida towards the end when we are making the final remarks. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Anand, and thank you, ICS, and having listened to all the three speakers here, and so I'm said that at the last line we missed her. Nonetheless, I think I will do my customary role as a participant and also as a discussant here. Like, yeah, listening to all the three speakers, like indeed, like starting with Dr. Arvind here, his take very candid discussion on nothing too much late to have a good meal, right? Actually, that really definitely shows how the draft of the plenum itself, if I have to discuss about it, is really as Dr. As Swamsida said that the drafting itself actually took more than 7 to 8 months. Like started in November, December onwards. That you see, it's I see Pang Huning and Xi Jinping himself as the most important person or the chair, because the document's name itself actually is his name, if you have to say, because it says that comprehensively deepening reforms and advancing Chinese form of modernization. This definitely shows the C signature everywhere. So therefore, we see it's all signature, C signature galore in the report itself. And I also want and I agree with Dr. Yelleri saying that it is nothing high octane. Indeed, it is a very cautious report that it really tries to bring in a lot of issues, try to cover a lot of ground, but at the same time, sometimes, as we see, is that most of these are being discussed. As he said, it was the 18th party third plenum, central committee third plenum that was being discussed, more than 19th third plenum there. So it shows that the assessment of the last 10 decades of what Xi Jinping has done, like 10 years of his leadership. So this definitely actually throws in light how Xi Jinping leadership is really taking economy per se economy of China per se to his leading from the front. Yeah, not only heading the most important if you say central group today, it has become more of a commission today, Advanced Comprehensive Deepening Reforms Commission. So definitely that shows that the primacy of economy under Xi Jinping. Therefore, he is more, or the chief economist in Xi Jinping. Therefore, so coming back to Professor Venkat's intervention and his rightfully taking into what is the newness that if Arvind says it is cautious old wine in new bottle, so Professor Venkat says that no, it is not just old wine, but it has also new in the report. So some of the new things that he really looks into is like indeed going to the report, it says the new qualitative productive forces. So if we look into the 1970s, Chou and Lai's discussion on the four modernization project that China really, agriculture, industry, science and technology, and defense. I think here, what new we see is also that one thing, that is innovation, excelling innovation, taking away from the 1970s project. And also, like both Dr. Yellery and Professor Venkat talked about the central local relationship. Unlike in other federal countries, in China, we definitely talk about central local relations, provincial relations. So how has this changed the nature of relationship under Xi Jinping? In the 80s and in the 90s especially, and the early 2000s, we could see central province fiscal relations, not political relations. But today, increasingly, it is, as Professor Venkat says, politics in command strategy. I think under Xi Jinping, that definitely has, and in this report, definitely it founds, it shows or indicates how politics in command under Xi Jinping has taken at the forefront. And as we see also with Professor Venkat's intervention with talking of the securitization of development in China. And latch on securitization of development in China, also we see also how Chinese even allocation of resources or even under central control, all it begets national security discourse in China. So if national security was external dimension before, we could see internal ramifications in this report. And I think with Professor Venkat and Dr. Venkat, and Arvind saying about it, it definitely shows that centralization, securitization has been rife here. And with regard to, again, both the speakers who dealt on the economics and innovation, today I was reading a report, and definitely the Chinese the government is coming out with the new concept of lying flat and doing nothing. Today the new concept is coming as like Lan Wei Wa. It's like rotten tail children in China. This shows the unemployment, problem or situation in China that has come into being. And this definitely shows that as the Third Plenum report's mandate is on economy, it definitely flows from that, the crisis, the domestic economic crisis that China is having, indicates from the two presentations here. So coming to Swam Sita's presentation, she did speak on the drafting and also on the personnel. But at the same time, what we see is today, the plenum report definitely talks about also on party self-governance. Now, and this usually it definitely shows that how party still is facing crisis with anti-corruption and anti-graft campaign. So the governance still finds resonance in the document itself, and therefore, what is China's advancing modernization? So is it trying modernization of the new qualitative productive forces, or is it talking about modernization of security, or is it talking about modernization of new form of relationship between the center and province, center and province interactions here? So these definitely shows that how the third plenum report is actually, and it shows the third plenum report indicates what the future of China is going to be. Although, as Professor Venkat says, that we shouldn't read too much into it, but at the same time, there is no escape. We definitely have to read it, what China thinks about it. And some, I would have a couple of points to say and then leave it to the Q&A to the chair. Like, firstly, as I said, that it is a very cautious document and the report itself. And now, 2 weeks after the plenum, we could see the Betaha meeting going on. And this time we could only see scientists. Initially, it was politicians who were lining up, but this time it is more than 60, 70 scientists. And Professor Venkat, I would allude to you here, it is mostly scientists of AI technology, high-tech innovation, innovators are actually being awarded and being invited by Xi and the Central Committee to give them ideas in China, in Hebei, in Bohai. So this definitely shows that actually, indeed, it shows that what's the China's new project of development that's going to be. And the other point that I want to make is with regard to the law and governance, that the self-governance and the laws, and also improving law-based governance in China. Now, I think if the next fourth plenum, which is called the political plenum, happens in November, I think this is a proper segue to the next plenum. And if you remember, the 18th party's Central Committee fourth plenum was on rule-based governance or law-based governance on Chinese characteristics, which I wrote ICS analysis there when I was ICS. I think this resonates also. I think it's a right time for Xi Jinping and the Communist Party of China to look into it. So therefore, I'll stop here. And also the last one before I go and ask the chair to do, and all these structural reforms or institutional reforms, China doesn't want, or Xi Jinping doesn't want to wait until 35 or 49. It has to be done by 2029, now, which is the 80th anniversary of the PRC. So this was the man is in hurry. I know I don't know if the party or the state is in a hurry. Therefore, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Beam. In fact, you kind of ended your point by saying all those years, which may look rhetoric, but there is definitely meaning to each of those years in their own ways. So thank you for summing up this very precisely. I'll now open this up for Q&A. I haven't seen any raised hands, so I'll just go with a couple of questions which are already in the chat box. This one is specifically to Venkat. It's about Xi Jinping's succession plans, which also kind of segues from what Beam just pointed out in terms of 2029. So what are his succession plans? And he's also, as he's preparing a law and framework for future presidents. So any indication to that, Venkat, because it's specifically to Venkat?
I really, I'm surprised how that question. I think someone like Swayam Siddhar is more appropriate to answer, what's happening at elite politics. So I'll pass it on to her. I haven't read much actually on that, and I haven't written also. I don't know, maybe he's confusing me with someone. So I'd like to pass it on to Swayam Siddhar. Swayam Siddhar, you are a more appropriate person actually to respond.
Yeah, Swayam Siddhar.
So this is a question I think every person who's trying to study politics gets, but there is actually no answer to it. I mean, there are speculations if General Xi drops dead, tomorrow who will be the next person to take over, but then it could go anyway. Either, I mean, the loyalists of Xi that are there in the Politburo Standing Committee right now, they might not hold any power. However, and also there is a crackdown on cliques and gangs under Xi Jinping. Other cliques and gangs, not Xi Jinping's. So either one of them might assume the position of general secretary, or another thing could happen where like in the past we have seen that how Tang Xiaoping came to power, um, even though a Mao loyalist was there in power. So either a new leader could come up, but I think this is a really tricky question, and we really don't know if what will happen after Xi. So that's my answer.
All right. So I have two raised hands. In fact, Ambassador Kanta is saying that he is not able to some issue with raising hand option at his end. So there is Professor Monty and there is Ambassador Kanta, but there is a question from Gagi, uh, which is uh, which is talking about how public ownership as a mainstay has been removed from the plenum document. And so she is asking what are the implications for such omissions, and does this actually hint more government support to the private sector, or is it playing down public ownership? I would just to add, any of the panelists can answer, either Venkat or Arvind. I mean, there is also a lot more talk about complementarity. I mean, if you go through the document itself, there is a lot more emphasis on the private sector. Of course, the private sector law, which Venkat did talk about. So there is this complementarity, and which also the document also says that every sector is equally important. So if that is the case, then just to link Gagi's question, what is the role now for both private and public sector?
Yeah, just the short answer is, the report is very, very clear that although they are speaking of private promotion, nowhere it is mentioned that the state-owned sector will be given, secondary importance, or it won't be given importance. I mean, it is needless to say state-owned enterprises will definitely be, in the forefront. Whether it is, the BRI or the digital Silk Route on the external front, internally also, for example, if you look at AI, for example, there are different kinds of actors involved. One set of actors are those who are actually state-owned enterprises who provide most critical equipments related to science and technology, cutting edge, R&D. So, for example, telecom players like China Mobile, China Telecom. I mean, they are, very, very critical players in how they go about advancement in science and technology. Similarly, if you look at, uh, I think, if you look at setting up of Central Science and Technology Mission, how the Central Science and Technology Mission is being very instrumental, just formed in 2023. It is being very instrumental in allocating resources and funding to not only private players, but definitely to some of the leading state-owned enterprises as well. So I think, given that what has happened after the Jack Ma episode and the tech backlash, and given that the Chinese economy is going through a very difficult period, and overall the change in development model from real, estate-led development to technology-led development, it becomes very, very important for the party leadership to win back the confidence of the private sector. And so therefore, I think that is a very significant signaling, political signaling, that, for the timing at least, let bygones be bygones, and, let's come and rebuild our nation together. Yeah.
Thanks, Venkat. So Professor Monty first, and then after him, we'll have Ambassador Kampai.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So, firstly, I really want to compliment the panel. Excellent presentations. Now, one specific question, then two broad questions. The specific question is probably to Arvind. This rural-urban gap, any statistical information about the per capita income, which was, last I had checked was, the gap was 3.5 times. Has that increased further, or from your presentation, it seems it has increased further, even though the policies have been oriented towards reducing the income gap. So that's the specific question. Now, the other general question is, there is a new grammar of reforms which Xi Jinping has tried to promote. Reform, in contrast to Deng Xiaoping, means less flexibility and more conformity to central paradigm. The central core principles, economic, political, security, all those things. Two, I can go on, but I want to sort of get your view. What are the characteristics of the new grammar of reforms of Xi Jinping? One is this. Second, the private is encouraged, is seen as complementary, but has to be under the tight supervision of the state, tighter than ever before. Three, decentralization in decision-making, no. You have very limited scope of decentralization, whether it is provinces, enterprises, lower party units, and government departments. So I would like you to articulate Xi Jinping's grammar of reforms, if we can frame it as such. The last general question is, I take this formulation, as all of us do, quite seriously. Comprehensively deepening reforms, etc., etc. Now, deepening in 2013, the first Third Plenum under Xi Jinping, meant that in certain sectors, particularly in the economy, he wants to very strictly enforce the reforms, and not broaden their scope, but deepen their scope. Is that changing? Or my suspicion is that has changed. It has become more and more in all sectors. And that's what is meant by comprehensive. Yet, and all of you focus, particularly Venkat, focus so much on innovation. If you look at the last 15 years discourse on innovation, under Hu Jintao, there was this big bang focus, create an innovation society. And state investment began to increase very fast in innovation. Come Xi Jinping, you have innovation taken to a strategic level, and all sectors, private particularly, state investment continued to grow, and private investment was also asked for, that every enterprise, every big enterprise, all these big industries, they have to, and they also did invest. And the Western formulation that China's R&D has increased so much because of the high investment by the state is true, but private participation is also has increased. So is my reading right, or private, because Venkat seemed to give the impression that private sector is not doing enough for innovation. And that may be one of the reasons why they have been challenged on so many fronts. So these are my few comments. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, sir. I think Arvind, and then I think most was to Venkat. Yeah.
So thank you so much for the question, sir. When we study about the disparities over here, especially between the rural and urban, there are two important indices which were considered. In both the cases, the household income of the rural and urban have increased. Not really significantly, but it has increased. But the difference between the number of times it has increased, the rural household have not been able to capitalize on that. They have not created their own niche, or they have not created substantial increase vis-a-vis the urban households. That's one. Second thing, the problem with the major problem, why there will be more disparity with regard to rural urban is the case because the central government has been little slow in fixing the salaries for the new employment of the manufacturing sector, which has moved into the western sector, western provinces is concerned. It looks like it is not a priority for them. They're putting it for the provincial government to decide on that. The provincial government are absolutely looking for the central government bonds, the infusions from the banks to decide what could be the minimum threshold of the salaries. I think that makes the entire scenario pretty dicier for the rural households. That's my reading, sir. I think a couple of other questions, but I will answer two quick questions over here. I think the earlier questions with regard to the public ownership, which Venkat sir tried to answer that. I want to add one more point to that. This is again, the type 2 answers, which I think Venkat mentioned in the beginning, though it did not mention it, but I think we read it saying that, public ownership, which is Rankong Soyo-chuan, is not mentioned. But it is absolutely the underlying framework of a communist economy. If it is not mentioned, it is implicit in that case. Why it is not explicitly mentioned? If you're asking me and trying to poke me an answer, I will answer it in short 20 seconds. One, after the Henan crisis, Evergrande crisis, the ownership of these assets which have been left incomplete, and there is no stakeholder who is going to take the ownership. Remember, recently, central government said, okay, we'll fix up the price and let others buy it. And then the residents said, no, this is not going to support, because your rate of inflation of the prices of the property is different than our prices. So the question about who owns those vacant homes. Second thing, if there is a buyout, what prices need to be bought is not yet fixed, and it is still in a long debate. And third important thing, the amount of mortgage prices and then the loan the residents have given. The central government is absolutely undecided what property and asset to be called private property and a public property. Remember, this has left a big shock by the central leadership, even to utter a word called ownership. Ownership has become a taboo, in the entire Henan province and also in the Hubei province now, south of Beijing. So given that, there is absolutely, I think, circumventing the word of using public ownership, which is quite visible over there. I think that's number two. With regard to Mohanty sir's one more point about decentralization, one thing which the central government wants is the intensified efforts of a decentralization, right? But at the policy level, as I explained, and I think as even Venkat was explaining, and Beam and Sam was also explaining that. But after the third plenum, it looks like the central government still wants to control the strings. And if that is the case, that means that there is an underlying process of centralization. And on the top, maybe central government wants people to come and take the ownership. That is not really going to happen on the ground. I think I'm going to stop.
Venkat?
Yeah. Yes. So I think I'll just, very briefly try to address Professor Mahanti's question relating to grammar of politics, and then he was also talking about the private sector.
Grammar of reforms.
Oh, sorry, sorry. Sorry. Harold Lasky was looming in my mind. Okay, yeah, grammar of reforms. Okay.
Our common inspiration.
Yeah, yeah. So grammar of reforms, I think, I don't know whether I've understood. I think the keywords are self-reliance, whole of nation approach, quality, not quantity, adding to national capacity. Earlier, the private sector faced that kind of a backlash because it was felt that, this Alibaba and Tencent, and they are building up e-commerce platforms, which are just like Western platforms, and they're e-commerce platforms, and they're not adding to the national capacity. So therefore, they were for no reason getting subsidies and all. So withdraw those benefits and give it to those who are adding to national capacity. So the thrust is now on private players will be encouraged, but only those who are completely surrendering to this sole choreographer called Xi Jinping. Everyone should dance to the tunes of Xi Jinping. And finally, I think, if we look, see, ever since Xi Jinping has come, I think the narrative this time, there is an upping of ante of sorts, but there is also certain continuity. So if you look at quality of growth, economy not very important, GDP obsession, so therefore it fits into that line of thinking where he started by talking of, the importance of the new normal. We should not go for blind, GDP growth, overcoming century of humiliation, the geopolitics aspect of it. So I think there is a certain continuity as well. Only this time there is a certain kind of upping of ante from from basically Xi Jinping's
Sorry,
image.
I also asked whether the focus on state support for innovation still remains, or private has been called upon to supplement.
Private has been called upon to supplement, but it is predominantly state.
Yes.
As long as you are in alignment with, Xi Jinping's philosophy, new development philosophy, you will be provided anything and everything with a very high degree of accountability, of course.
Oh, okay. Ambassador Kanta has been waiting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I audible, Anand?
Yes,
You
sir.
are,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me first of all compliment all panelists for very good, insights they've offered, and also compliment Anand for the structure of this conversation. I think it's so much more interesting and productive to hold it like this. Well, I have some questions and comments, starting with Swabsiddha. I have one question and a couple of suggestions she may like to explore. Our question is about why this new policy milestone of 2029 has been introduced. They had earlier milestones of 2035, 2049, sometime in 2050. What's the significance in terms of the politics? Because it will happen, 2029 will happen after 21st Party Congress in 2027. Is it setting the stage for fourth term for Xi Jinping? Because he'll have unfinished reforms left. Because the resolution which was adopted talks about completion of those reforms by 2029. So I wanted to have your comments as also Bhim on that. I had two suggestions which you may wish to explore. Swamsitha talked about the drafting process, but one set of numbers which has come, in terms of amendments which were offered and amendments which were accepted after the draft was circulated, there's a very sharp decline compared to earlier plenums. Does it indicate a sort of less consultative process, an aspect of broken feedback mechanism where set leadership is less willing to take on board suggestions coming up from within party hierarchy? That's one. Second suggestion, Swamsiddha, Kang, frankly, was not all that important. For him, he was not a Politburo member. And the fact that he has not been dismissed from party, it was more a case of indiscretion rather than corruption or compromise on security, or as some people had suggested earlier. I think what we need to look into more, even more than two defense ministers, former defense minister Li Shangfu and Wei Fenghe, what happened in PLA rocket force, sacking of commander, political commissar, and one deputy commander, and possibly suicide of second deputy commander. I think this is something has not been explained. And it's not just corruption, it's something more than that. You may wish to look into that matter further, because it has implications for all of us in national security domain. Coming to Arvind, Arvind, you rightly pointed out, how the outcomes of Third Plenum were somewhat underwhelming. But I have a larger question. Are we witnessing a trend under Xi Jinping where plenums themselves are becoming less important? Focus is shifted to party congress. If you look at the previous plenums, one plenum which had come up with ambitious reform agenda was, Third Plenum of 18th Central Committee in November 2013. But you are aware of what happened in terms of implementation. So do you see the shift where plenums are being de-emphasized to a certain extent under kind of leadership Xi Jinping provides? Venkat, I had 2-3 questions for you. One, you have really rightly pointed out how Xi Jinping is doubling down on whole, tradition of prioritizing innovation. It's not nothing new. This is something which is happening earlier, but now this has become a sort of centerpiece of his development agenda. But there's a problem there, because he's talking about now, continuing with export-led growth, because he has not, addressed a question of boosting domestic consumption. Export-led growth, but in high technology areas. And this is resulting in serious contradictions in global marketplace. West was willing to accept China supplying goods in low-tech areas, but when it comes to what is called future industries, there is going to be much greater pushback, and especially when China is also, tightening flow of technology. There's a very interesting MERICS report which came out just a few days ago on that subject. So the whole business of new quality production forces, providing the mainstay of, or rather one centerpiece of China's future development model, how will it play out in terms of China's engagement with developed countries, and to some extent even with emerging markets like India? Two other questions which I had. You rightly brought out the importance of increasing total factor productivity. Now, in fact, Xi Jinping in his explanation also linked, how innovation has to be judged to how it contributes to enhanced total factor productivity. But along with that, you referred to all these developments, constrained private sector, which is now required to subserve strategic objectives of party state. It's not so much that it's space being reduced, but it's more guided approach. Politics in command, national security considerations taking priority of economic growth, doubling down industrial policy. How do you see this evolving? Do you think this is the right approach for boosting the total factor productivity? Because this has been a trend for last several years, that total factor productivity is weakening. My final question is that when it comes to immediate and the structural challenges, both immediate and structural challenge Chinese economy is facing, property sector crisis, local government debt, weak household demand, greater pressure in terms of deflation getting ingrained in economy. Where do you see, how these problems have been addressed? Because the innovation uh, cannot possibly be a replacement or antidote to these structural problems Chinese economy is facing. What is your comment on that? And finally, Manu, when we talk about the new grammar reforms of Xi Jinping, we'll have to also discuss these reforms.
Thank you, Ambassador Kanta. So quickly, there was a lot of questions on the table for all of the speakers. So Swamsiddha, and then Arvind, and then Venkat.
Thank you for your question, sir, and the suggestions that you gave. And I did speak a little about PLA members getting purged and Wei Fenghe and Li Shangfu. I am not sure if JNU Wi-Fi did not work and uh, members could not hear it. But to the question on the 2029 reforms, I think as of now, it's a little early to speak about it, but from what I understand, there is a sense of urgency. There is a sense of urgency in what Xi Jinping wants to achieve, and when it comes to goals which are slated for 2047 or 2035, I think they are just years at this point. But from what it seems, Xi Jinping wants to realize these goals much before, and that's because he's probably eyeing for as many terms as he can while he is alive. So if he is probably eyeing for a fourth term, which is again a little early to speak about, but since there has never been any talk of any successor, so I think his main goal is to achieve goals related to science and technology and reforms and education and a number of other things, because even under the 2029 banner there are 300 reforms that he wants to achieve. So I think it's a sense of urgency in completing as many tasks before the maximum number of terms that he can take. I'm not sure if this is a very ambitious answer, but that's my take as of now on this.
Arvind?
Thank you for your question, sir. Yeah. So when I began, I did mention that in this party third plenum document, they're referring to the 18th Party Congress third plenum. No mention about the 19th party's third plenum. Importantly, if you look at the third plenum which occurred or which was held in the 19th Party Congress, it did not serve the purpose of the third plenum what it was did in the 80th Party Congress. So it was the fourth plenum which discussed the issues which were supposed to be discussed by the third plenum. So if you look sequentially, over the period of time, the importance of third plenum is decreasing, and that is, I think, purposely done. What is most significantly, it might result into a conclusion that third plenum would be any other plenums, because if you see in past 5 to 6 years, there are more midterm interventions done by the party leadership in terms of the directions given to the economy. And if that is the case, what third plenum says and what is being midterm interventions is meant, there is a void being created. Second point, which is very important over here, is that when the third plenum happened and it delayed, it happened for all obvious reasons. There was no consensus among the party leadership over the allocation of the ministries and the priorities for the economy, and that delayed the taking place of the third plenum, which pushed it to July. So what it all indicates is that this is somewhere going to create some kind of complexities given Xi Jinping's way that there should be major clarity and nothing should actually challenge him. So over the period of time, all those conventions, all those principles which has been which party retained over the period of past 75 plus years, Xi Jinping will make sure that either that becomes obsolete, if not redundant, and it gives him a major scope to have a major say in the policies, whether through the midterm interventions and otherwise ideological. Thank you.
Venkat?
Yeah, where do we go from where does China go from here? I think as long as Xi Jinping is in complete command, of the situation, perhaps, but is this sustainable? Frankly speaking, I, for one, feel that it's not sustainable. Simply because, given the huge territorial size, to what extent, the collective leadership, which has been a hallmark of the party leadership post 1978, to what extent she can keep on challenging it. Sooner or later, I suppose, uh, there will be some kind of, uh, what is it called? A certain kind of a reaction that, what happens if there is a certain kind of a dosage that, the system is not used to. And I think that is something which all the China watchers should be very closely watching. And the Chinese leadership, I'm sure, is also very much aware that what next? Is it going to be sustainable? So I think it's a very, very ambitious task, and the sustainability of whatever is being done, given the central local provincial relations. So, for example, in the case of central provincial relations, some time back, the many of the provincial governments had complaints with the center saying that on commands from the center, they have ended up spending some money on some projects, and now that suddenly center says that this is of no use to me because of the dereal aestheticization. So then suddenly, the province becomes pauper. Now the center is saying that don't worry, I am going to, pay you, certain amount, so that you can spend. But I will also tell you how to spend. To what extent, these dynamics will play out, and how will the provincial leadership, relate this to the sub-provincial leadership? So I think these are some of the questions which will take time to unravel. But definitely the sustainability part of it looks very much in question. That would be my brief response. Yes, Anand.
Thanks, Venkat. And I think there are a couple of more questions in the chat box. So one from Mr. Rapai. This is to Arvind. He's asking about what will be the possible steps to tackle the issue of disparity. That which somehow also you had mentioned of the rural-urban gap. So even other than that, questions of, I think what he is referring to is also questions of inequality and how that is going to be countered. And then there is one to Swamsada is on how, do you think there could be something to do with Kang and how the punishment meted out to him was kind of different from, there's a distinction between him and the other PLA members. So what is it that makes, what is that particular to him that he is treated in one way and the others in another way?
So thank you, Rapai sir. I mean, we have been discussing about the disparities in China over the period of time, the coastal provinces and then the interiors, then talking about urban and then the rural. One has to understand the problem is the disparity which was created in China. I use the term created because it was into the hands of the state, whether they want to act like a welfare state and push the state sector, manage the state sector, or how they want to pursue it, or whether they want to just take the model of export-led growth. I think there are basic reasons why state leadership failed to understand how they can balance the economy. And as a result of it, if you see in specifically in last 3.5 years, there are certain regulations which have been let down by the state council, by the provincial government with regard to the capital on how much should be the pricing of second-hand houses, how much should be the pricing of resale prices, how much should be the cap on the second property if you're buying the second property. These are efforts which are needed to contain the overpricing. And then the second question is about, apart from this, is a redistribution. The entire concept of redistribution has lately understood by the Communist Party that it has to somewhere address the problem of social inequalities, and the party is addressing those questions about social inequalities. How earlier there were plans about the sister province programs, sister city programs, sister county programs. Those were not implemented. But after Xi Jinping's emphasis on the urban-rural, integrations, the URIs, these programs have been now taken on the forefront to implement it. You have the examples when the Shanghai municipality is taking, large amount of efforts in Yan'an and in the counties of Yan'an province. You have the same examples, the Shenzhen is taking, when it is a case of Lanzhou in some of the places in Gansu. So these are now re-augmented. And I think underlying this re-augmentation is very important with regard to the CPC's, examples that, redistribution is important to end the disparity, because disparity is a major major problem, with regard to the poverty eradication scheme. So somewhere this is a major problem that China is dealing with. And I think there are a number of more forms of policies. I think the CPC and the party will come in recent years.
Thanks, Arvind. Swamsida, very quickly.
Yes, sir. This is a difficult question to answer. However, I think Kang was a Xi loyalist from the beginning, and the way his career trajectory progressed, he was made foreign minister very early in his political career. So it seems like him not meting out a very harsh punishment to him was also saving face for General Secretary Xi Jinping. However, when it comes to the PLA and especially the PLA rocket force, it seems like there is a targeted attack on removing officers, and what Xi Jinping probably wants to do is inject officers who are probably more loyal to him. This is how I see it. So, thank you.
Thank you. So I think we have almost run out. We have clearly run out of time. So I think Beam, there was a question which Ambassador Kanta had said, and Beam, I'll give Beam about 2 minutes maybe to make his point.
Yeah, thank you, Anand, and thank you, Professor. Sorry, Ambassador Kanta here. And actually, in fact, a very provocative question. And as a scholar of Chinese politics, we deal with a lot of this, anniversaries, dates, and especially with regard to China. So, yeah, why the 80th year of anniversary of PRC? Actually, at the same time, I don't speculate, but when we look into some of the readings closely, is also, I think it is more of the party's deliberate attempt that he would be in the cups of his, he would be 75. I think, in fact, in 2029, he would be 76. Not only that, so it is between that, it would be the next fourth plenum of the 21st Party Congress. And also it would be the midway of the 15th five-year plan. So then cuts to 35, it could really, if you see the 15th plan, 15th five-year plan, it could really, and definitely it will deal with these lot of economic issues then. I think by then, also if you look into the geopolitics context, the Taiwan issue, the American elections also, I think it definitely resonates that what Xi Jinping or the party is up to. Now, the other question, I think that it may not be an academic question, but the feasibility that we see is that would be the fourth plenum of 2029. Not only that, it is also like he would be in his, the next, as I don't want to speculate, but there are, readings on the wall that there is. But with regard to if plenums are important, indeed, I think in China, apart from the, so to say, the Liang Hui and all, I think the plenums are very, very important because it is the party which runs the state. And if and now Xi Jinping being the chair or the head of the Deepening Reforms Commission, although that is a super cabinet, the economic reforms cabinet, I think the plenum is the most important party institution and the event. I think without that, I think the separation of the Fan Kung, the the separation of the division of the labor between the party and the state. I think the plenum is important for us, and it is, I think, becoming even more, I think, important in the future to really go about to see the progress of reforms and the direction of reforms. So these are all later on discussed in the the Liang Hui and other state agencies. And if also, like, is it new grammar of reforms? So indeed, that is still is like when we see the debates and the discussions, and when we see the political reports and the work reports coming up, it talks about kaiga. It's always reforms it's talking about, if you have to really read about it. So I would rest my case on that. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for your questions, and thank you.
Thanks, Beam. I had initially planned that I'll give 1 minute to all the speakers finally, but I think we have clearly run out of time. So this was a very, very productive session. We have almost now completed 2 hours. So my thanks to all the 3 speakers for their, and also for Beam for his remarks. We had about 50 people once at point of time. Now we are still having about 30, little over 30 people in the room. So it's really great that this has to be, this was definitely something worth the time. We could have had it a little more earlier, but finally we are really happy that we could get this done. So thank you to all the 3 speakers. Thanks, Beam. And now over to people at the ICS. Chinmay.
Thank you, Chair. Now I seek your permission to formally bring an end to today's session.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
With this, we come to the end of today's seminar. We thank Dr. Anand P. Krishnan, Dr. Bhim Subba, Professor G. Venkatraman, Dr. Arvind Yerli, and Ms. Swam Siddha Somal for gracing today's seminar with their presence and for giving us their precious time. We also thank all the participants for today. The video of today's discussion shall be available on the ICS YouTube channel. We would like to invite you to the upcoming Wednesday seminar scheduled for 20th August 2024. The title of the seminar is Bay of Bengal Integration, Past, Present and the Future. Further information regarding the event can be found on the ICS website. You may also subscribe to our newsletter for regular updates. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you,
you
everyone.
all. Thank you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so